On today's episode of the Accidental Talmudist podcast, I welcomed Rabbi Friedman. It was amazing. You're going to love this. He's the author of Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore and The Joy of Intimacy. And he founded the Beis Hana School in Milwaukee. He's been an emissary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe for decades. But really what he is a modern walking sage. And he looks the part. He's got the long white beard. And he is sharing such practical advice for making relationships work. He's all about marriage, the importance of marriage, how you find a partner for marriage, how you stay married, how you make marriage work. And he gets very specific and talks about intimacy and the difference between mere sex, which he likens to pornography, and we'll get into that, and true intimacy. And to get to intimacy, the secret is nothing. Nothing. Nothing is an elusive goal. It's a place that we seek to come to. And many people will live an entire life and never reach a moment of no thing, of true nothingness, and the incredible power of true nothingness. But if you at least know what it is, you're so much more likely to reach such a point and such a moment. So you've got to hear this conversation that we have so that you get to this understanding of what that goal is and what nothingness truly is.
Accidental Talmudist wisdom you don't want to miss. Now my pal Sal, take it away.
Welcome, Rabbi Friedman, to the podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. We just saw each other the other night.
The other night you were giving a talk.
At the Malava Malka.
At the Malava Malka, at the shul up my street. It was so nice. And it was great to hear your talk. You brought out some stuff that, some that we had heard and some that we had not heard when you visited our show. You were on our live show last year. And really, we should do a whole series with you. I think we could do 10 one-hour interviews, and we would just begin to scratch the surface of what you could say about marriage, about intimacy, and about the Rebbe. But this is going to be a wide-ranging conversation, and it's a conversation. It's not a speech, and not even an interview. I like it that it should just be a conversation.
Okay.
And see what happens.
You start.
So,
you go ahead.
But just before we even get to the formal exchange of information, as it were, you just made me think of something. You said that in today's parlance in English, hot and cool mean the same thing.
Right.
Something is hot, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's both are popular with the young people. Right? And something happened this morning. I dropped off my daughter at school, and my license plate is a little quirky. It says BDA space MNSH. Can you picture it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's Beta Mensch. Right? That's my license plate. So my daughter gets out of the car, and a schoolmate of hers says, "Oh, that license plate is sick." And she's already out, but she smiled. My son is still in the car because I'm dropping him off at another school. He's younger. And I check with him. I'm like, "Does that mean it's good? Do they like it?" "That's sick. It's good?" He says, "Yes, Dad, that's good. Don't worry." So, language keeps changing. But let's start with that. We'll come back to your bio and your background. I want to do that. But let's just start with talking about language, because something that you said the other night that was so interesting is that the three words, which I think our society and our culture most associates with being good and kind, the most positive statement you could make, you turned it right around and you said that "I love you" is not the most positive and sweet and kind thing that you could say. Why is that?
No, it's not. It's selfish. It's self-centered. It describes me, not you. So when I say "I love you," I'm talking about myself. And it may be nice to hear, but it is not the finest sentiment in the world. There are much finer things that we can say to each other. Like, for example, under the chuppah, at the marriage, the wedding ceremony, if you ask the average kala, bride, what did he say? What did he say when he gave you the ring? They all remember the first two words. Hare at, you are hereby. The rest they don't remember because they don't care. He started with you. That's good enough, right? Mm-hmm. We don't start with I love, I promise, I cherish, no. You. And that's all they want to hear. That's all that's necessary. And the same with every blessing we make is Baruch Atah. We start with you, only this time in the masculine. But it's so much nicer and so much cleaner when you start with you rather than I. So if you say, you I love, it's a little more meaningful than I love you.
Not you're the person who happens to satisfy my need, but rather I'm acknowledging you, this person in all of your totality is drawing me in, and I want to know more and I want to be with you, but it's about you, not about me.
And that's why if a man says, I love everything about my wife, I don't know. You love everything about her. Why is she all alone in the world? Because you love everything about her. You're not connecting to her. Like, I want to marry you for your money. That's not a bad deal. You have money. I like money. Well, perfect match made in heaven, right? What's wrong with that? Really wrong.
And we instinctively recoil from that.
Yes. There's an implied message there. I want to marry you for your money really means I just like to have the money without marrying you. Is that possible? No? Okay, I'll marry you. There's an insult there that is horrible. Horrible. I want the money. I want your talents. I want your looks. I want your love. I want your family. I just don't want you.
And now you're venturing to things that we think are very positive.
That's right.
If I say, I love your personality. I love the way you do things. I love the way you make me feel. I love your family. You start naming these qualities, and we will praise a person who enumerates the qualities of his love.
Right.
But it's not about her. It's about those qualities.
So I want to marry you for your money. Everyone knows is wrong. I want to marry you for love. Not any better. In fact, money is more useful. Money will keep us together. Love will not. So if I want your love, I'm saying the same thing. Can I just have your love without having to put up with you and your opinion and your shtick and your personality and your... What do I need that for? Just give me the love and shut up. It's
and
really
keep it coming
nasty.
No matter how I behave.
Yeah, right. It's really nasty. So what's better than I love everything about you? If you're going to get married, there better be something more to it than that. Because you can't get married for things. No things, including love. So here's the ironic thing. If you ask the average person, what is a marriage? A marriage is people who love each other and enjoy sex. Those are the two things that destroy marriages, love and sex, because they are things. If you can't get past those things and really want your spouse in your life, then you're not married. Or you're married to the things. You're not married to each other. Now, what is each other? And it's nice, sounds good, nobody knows what it means. If you take all things away, what's left to my wife? I love everything about her.
Are we not the sum of our attributes?
Uh-huh. Whatever that means. Those are nice words, but
right,
what?
Right.
So first of all, a little example. Your wife is out of town. You miss her. You miss her. What about her do you miss? Nothing about her. She's not home. I miss her. The minute she walks in the door, it becomes about something. But when she's not there, it's about her. So we know what that means. At least we have a vague idea. What does it mean, I miss her? To some degree, I miss the things about her that annoy me. Because I miss her. And there are things about her that annoy me. So when I miss her, I miss that too.
And we so rarely appreciate those things until she's not there,
Right.
until she's missing. Because as you say, when she's there, then it's all the things that I want to argue about or press or even compliment, but it's the things.
But to recognize that love is a thing, sex is a thing, it's not a person. I mean, you can love chocolate. There's obviously no person there, no personality. So again, what does it mean to be married? To be married means to have an other in your life. And what does other mean? Not you. Simple. Not you. Her own opinion, her own needs, her own personality, her own thoughts. Not you. Now, do you want that? Or is that the part you just tolerate in exchange for the things that you're getting?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just an exchange, first of all, it's insulting. But secondly, there's this horrible phenomenon where people who are married happily, successfully, feel alone in the world. And that should not happen. You're married. Why are you alone in the world? So there is this mystery which deserves a lot of thought. You're very close to your parents. You're not alone in the world. And yet you are. You have a very good relationship with your parents. And that's what some comedian was joking about. What does it mean, a single guy? What's a single guy? What makes you single? Because you're all alone? Nobody else is coming to the date? Mm-hmm. You're coming by yourself? Nobody's really single. You have a family. You come from somewhere. And yet you're single. You live at home, comfortably ensconced in your parents' house, and you're alone. You're single. Yes, because there's some part of us that remains alone no matter how good our parents are, no matter how close we are with our parents, no matter how many friends we have. There's some part that remains alone until you're married. Marriage is the only way to satisfy that aloneness, which is killing us.
Right, and you have to be committed to creating that partnership before you've even met the person, right? This is something that you've got to do and accept, and people don't in this culture.
Yeah. The idea that I will marry if and when I meet the fantastic person I'm looking for, then you don't really want to be married. You want to get married before you meet anybody. It's when you meet people that you get a little discouraged. Marriage sounds like such a good idea until you meet the people you have to marry. But marriage itself is a wonderful idea, necessary for civilization, necessary for human well-being. We need that kind of exclusive connection where you are number one to each other. You're not number one to your mother, hopefully, because she has a husband who was there before you. So you're number three.
And if you have siblings, you should all be equal and be beneath dad. Right.
Yes. And with your children, the same thing. Mm-hmm. You're not one with your children. You have your spouse. So where are you the only one? In a marriage. that takes away that particular kind of aloneness. But marriage has to be your objective, not if somebody is fantastic. You want to be married, and the first thing you want to know from the person you're meeting is how much do they want to be married? So the first thing you have to be compatible in is your appreciation of marriage, not your appreciation of each other. That comes second.
Yeah, and I think some people, now if you're just joining this podcast, I'm sitting here with Rabbi Manis Friedman. And if you're listening, I just want to paint the picture for you. Rabbi Manis Friedman looks a little bit like a wizard. He's got a long white beard. He's got a beautiful thick mustache. He's got beautiful thick white eyebrows, white hair, and of course he's got a kippah on his head. He is a traditional Jew. And some would say that this commitment to marriage is, it's a traditional Jewish idea, and
or
Jews
religious
are...
idea.
What's that?
Or religious idea.
Or a religious idea. But that modern people, they're more sophisticated. They've outgrown these old-fashioned ideas, And when we compare our grandparents or our great-grandparents' generation, where divorce was very uncommon, to today, when divorce is frighteningly common, so many marriages are ending. I think more end than stay together, right? The divorce rate is more than half. And in younger people, it's probably well more. And so the question becomes, were they better at finding, their soulmates or their suitable partners? Or are we just unwilling, is this young generation unwilling to stay in an unfulfilling marriage? And what I hear you saying is, it's not about fulfilling or unfulfilling. You can build a wonderful life with a partner who shares your values. And people are entering these marriages with the wrong values.
As a general rule, those things that are true in the world, in life, can grow stale and shallow. And then people think, okay, we don't need that anymore. The problem is only that it's gotten shallow, and therefore you need to deepen it, dig a little deeper. But there's the answer. There's the truth. You can't substitute some newfangled idea, because this is real. If it feels unappealing, if it feels unnecessary, it's because we're not digging deep enough. So instead of throwing things away, most traditional things, maybe we need to look a little deeper and find how it satisfies and appeals to us, because it did appeal for so many years to our ancestors. They each found their dimension, their level, their strata in this. Now we need to find ours. But don't throw it away. Dig a little deeper. There's a lot of good there. And that's true of marriage. Marriage is failing not because it's not a good idea. It's because we're just skimming the surface. We're not digging in. So we're not getting the benefits.
All right, so we're gonna move sort of into the marriage and get beneath the covers, as it were. But first, let me share with the folks a little bit more background about you. Something that you and I have in common is, I believe you came to this country when you were 5 years old?
3.
You were 3, okay. From Prague, is that right?
Yes.
And so you came at a very young age.
Very young.
You had a little bit of a first language. I came when I was 5, so Spanish really was my first language. But young enough that you have no accent, of course. And yet, do you share with me this idea that you're always a little bit of an outsider? Like you know.
Sometimes it pays to be. You pull out that card when it's when yeah, I'm from Prague.
You're an immigrant.
When it works, and when it doesn't work, I say, no, I grew up in Brooklyn.
Okay. And before you became, and you're an expert in marriage, you're an expert in intimacy, but before you became that, you also went on a big adventure. You were an emissary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and you went to Minnesota. right? And I
More
don't think
exotic than Prague.
it is more exotic than Prague in terms of Jewish life. And you built a Jewish community there, a girls' school. I mean, that took a lot of guts. You didn't know that it was going to work out. You had to have some faith and make it happen. I imagine there were some scary moments along the way. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to go to a new city and start, from scratch?
I was very naive, very idealistic. I wasn't afraid of anything. It was going to be wonderful. It was exciting. There was no downside whatsoever except the weather.
Okay. Yeah, well.
When I realized how cold it gets. But that didn't stop people from coming to our program. We started this crash course on Judaism for women.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a school. It's at the most a month people stay. Used to stay because they had the time. Now people are busy. So now it's a weekend. It's 10 days. So we have teenage girls. We have college girls. We have married women. We have over 50. We have single mothers, every demographic. But it's basically for women, and it's a crash course on Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how it started off. And of course, if you're talking to women, marriage, family, children is going to be a hot topic, always. There was one year when politics was a hot topic, back in the 70s, coming out of the 60s rebellion. The next summer, it was gone. Nobody was interested. And then Buddhism became a big topic because everybody was coming back from India and from Tibet, and they were all meditating. A year later, it was gone. Nobody was interested. And then food fads, seaweed and macrobiotic. And then that was gone. And every season, there's something completely new. The one thing that was consistent and still is family. All I need to do when the class gets a little boring, all I need to do is say, you're going to turn out like your mother. Oh, that's...
Is it different to say to a boy you're going to turn out like your father, to say to a woman, or to a young woman that you're going to turn out like your mom?
It's not as dramatic.
Okay.
So in the course of all these years, 50 years of talking about intimacy and marriage, and we had to dig deep. Many of the women were discouraged, weren't thinking of marriage at all. The model they saw growing up was not very appealing, and they had no intentions of getting married. We had to start from the beginning and go deep to discover what marriage is, why would you want it, how can it possibly work, why do you think your marriage is going to be any better than your friends, and so on. So I learned a lot. Things that we took for granted for so many years. Oh, you're 18? Well, get married, have children, raise a family. Why? Why not? That's
the world that you grew up in. It was the normal thing
Yeah.
for young people to just get up and get married at that age. I guess in the old world, 50 years ago, that was a normal age to get married.
Everybody, yeah.
Now, not at all. Not at all. I would imagine that in American youthful society, probably late 20s is the norm, even later.
People delay as long as they can. They just don't want to step into life.
And so you dug in for all these years. What did you learn? I mean, why? Why does this attitude exist? What has changed?
The fear of marriage or the fear of intimacy. I think in the 60s, we did something really destructive. We didn't realize it at the time. Like, what is this Me Too phenomenon that's going on? Women are very upset with how they're treated. Now, some people say that's because men don't respect women. Men have to learn to respect women. Men respect women today far more than 100 years ago or 80 years ago. This is and the men that don't respect women, there's nothing new.
Okay.
Others say the abuse of power. Men in a position of power will abuse that power and molest women or whatever it is. Also, old story from the beginning of history.
Mm-hmm.
Power corrupts. We know all that. This is not what's happening. Something new is happening. And what it is, I think, is not that we don't respect women. It's that men and women don't respect intimacy. Okay. We've lost respect for intimacy. Because in the 60s, everybody agreed, men and women, this is not male against female. We're not going to make things worse in our society by separating men and women even more than they are. In the 60s, we all decided that sex should be free. Free love. It sounded so nice. Because compared to going off to war in Vietnam, yeah, free love sounded really good.
And by
but
free,
free
they
of
meant
what?
Exactly. They meant guilt-free?
Guilt-free, commitment-free, emotional-free. Just relax, have some fun. It's just sex. No, don't make a big deal about it. It's recreational.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like it was liberating compared to the Victorian uptight. But now we're paying the price. Because sex used to be intimate. It's not. And intimacy, it turns out, is a necessary ingredient in life. You can live without sex. You can't live without intimacy.
And what is the difference between sex and intimacy?
Okay. Sex is a thing. You have it, you don't have it, you have more, you have less, you're good at it, you're not good at it, you're better at it. There's an it. It's an activity, it's a performance. You can be anxious about it.
It's like golf. You could have a handicap.
Yep.
This guy's good at it, this guy's more good at it, this guy's less good at it.
That's exactly how it's treated.
Okay.
Intimacy means no thing besides us. I'm not a thing, you're not a thing, and we are together. We have each other. To the exclusion of all things. So we're not going to do anything, we're just going to merge the two of us. Like if you asked your grandmother what goes on in the bedroom, she says nothing. You say, come on, what? What? She says nothing. And you say, okay, fine, you don't want to tell me? She is telling you. If you're talking about a bedroom where intimacy happens, the way it happens is you eliminate all things. So a bedroom is a no-thing zone. And to make it very clear, a husband and wife are intimate, or what should be intimate. And afterwards, he asks her, how was it? Sounds like an innocent question. It's horrible. It's horrible. First of all, there was no it. There was me. You're asking me how I am? That's insulting. So there's no it. Who let an it into the bedroom? There's just us. It is pornography, right? It's objectifying. Mm-hmm. I'm not an object. You're not an object. Where did the it come from? And to prove how bad it is, you have the proof right there. You need to ask.
Right.
Weren't you there? No, you weren't there. You were in your little world, having your experience, and you have no idea what the other was feeling or needing, and so you have to ask. Sex separates us. It does not bond us. Intimacy, on the other hand, although it's exactly the same activity, but it's coming from a different place. It's coming from me, not from something about me, and it's for you, not something about you. So we're not sharing a common interest. We're merging with each other. There is no it.
And this is quite different, if we can just be specific, not graphic, but specific. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of a person who is focused on the partner and who's thinking, is my partner enjoying this? Is my partner enjoying that? Can I do this better? Is feeling like a giving person, but actually there's still this it between them. There's no technique in intimacy, is what I'm hearing you say.
Right. It's not a performance.
Right.
You can't be judged. And what it takes is, are you giving yourself completely? Can you give yourself a little more completely? That's it. Be there entirely. Surrender yourself completely so that you can merge and become one. So the more you eliminate things, the more bonded you become. Our grandparents did that. They wanted each other. They merged with each other. They became Siamese twins. To lose each other was horrific. Just the thought to be without you. Were they happy? Most people say, oh, they were miserable. Yeah, they were miserable. Life was miserable. The one good thing they had was each other. Mm-hmm. And then the things about each other, they didn't like that. So they argued and they bickered about every little thing, but they would never give up each other. Now we're doing the exact opposite. We can't tolerate each other, but we like a lot of things. So here's one of the telling differences. Engaging in sex, what has today become sex, leaves you a little diminished. You've lost something. A little self-respect, a little respect for your partner. Something went out. You lost something. You are diminished. Maybe you don't care. It was worth it. The fun, the pleasure, great. But you paid a price. With intimacy, the exact opposite happens. After being intimate properly, you feel more innocent than before. Because that part of you that transcends things, that is your innocent part. That's your childlike, innocent, uncorrupted, true self. And every time you contact that self, you become a little more innocent. So marriage is a fantastically holy thing, and it doesn't get diminished with time.
Do people feel going to that innocent place because of the vulnerability of it, and that
we're terrified of vulnerability? Terrified.
Well, and we should be because people are having sex outside of marriage, right? So if you make yourself vulnerable to somebody who's not committed to this thing that you have together, yeah, you're exposing yourself, and it will be bad. It will go wrong, and that's what people fear. But they associate that feeling of becoming vulnerable and then being exposed and hurt. They ascribe the wrong reason to that pain.
and think that if they don't make the commitment of marriage, they won't get hurt.
Right.
They do. It's the same pain and
Worse.
no gain.
Right.
It's all the negative, none of the positive. And look at the terms people use. We're so terrified of anything intimate that we come up with these sterile, meaningless euphemisms. Are you seeing anybody? You're not seeing anybody? Are you going with anybody? Are you hooking up?
That's just the worst phrase. It's unbelievable. It's so prevalent now, this hookup culture. Right?
Yeah. Is that what you're doing? You're hooking up? I don't know what that means.
Sounds like fishing.
Yeah, so it's just avoiding anything meaningful, emotional, vulnerable. Now, here's the thing. Vulnerability, we discovered very recently in the secular world that vulnerability comes from strength, not from weakness, right? That's one of the big insights we've gained in modern psychology. What is vulnerability from strength? What is the vulnerability if you're strong? We're so used to associating vulnerability with pain or with loss. What does it mean? You can be strong and vulnerable? Then you're not vulnerable. If losing you won't hurt me, then I'm not vulnerable. I'm invulnerable. And that's my strength. So when is vulnerability a strength, a virtue? I think the real meaning of it is, the Torah says, it is not good that man be alone. And the question is, why not? Why not? Actually, if I could be alone, that would be the best. No? If I could be really independent, well, what could be better? If I needed nobody and nothing, wouldn't that make me perfect?
And invulnerable.
Invulnerable.
Right.
Right. So God says, no, it's not good for man to be alone. Really? That doesn't sound right.
Because being invulnerable and alone means you cannot achieve something that can be achieved only through this merger.
So, yeah, you're right. It seems like by saying it is not good for man to be alone, God created that reality. Just like God said, let there be light, and there was light.
Mm-hmm.
God said, you're not going to be good alone. Now you're not good alone.
Right.
But what does it mean? What's not good about being alone? And the answer is being alone. You're not missing anything, but being alone, not good. Why? We don't know. It's a divine mystery. Not good to be alone. That's the vulnerability. So it's not you're going to get hurt, you're going to be lonely. No, I'm going to be alone and perfect, and that's not good. I need you to make my life or my existence worthwhile. That's a vulnerability. There's no pain involved.
Now, this is not... I very much like that you were connecting it with Hashem, with God. God said it is not good to be alone. You know, in Judaism, we have different kinds of laws. They're put into sort of different categories. Some are the rational laws. It makes sense. It's intuitive, and it makes sense to people that you shall not murder. But there's no rational reason why you can't have a cheeseburger, you know? In fact, non-Jews can't have a cheeseburger. There's nothing wrong with them having a cheeseburger, but we can't have a cheeseburger. So that's a super rational. Why? Because God said so. Where would you put man should not be alone? Is it rational or super rational?
Super rational.
Okay.
It's divine.
It's just because God said so.
Well, he instilled this divine instinct in us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even God said so. This is us now. We are not good alone, and there's no reason. There's no reason. Even when you're perfect, you can take care of yourself fine. You have for 30 years. Why can't you be alone? Because it's not divine to be alone. In fact, according to Kabbalah, when God said it is not good for man to be alone, he meant himself.
Really?
Why did he create the world? He was certainly perfect. Is perfect.
There was no loss. There was no pain. There were no car accidents. You know, there was no Boston Red Sox. It was good.
So why did he create the world? Did you miss the word alone?
Right.
He was alone.
And he didn't like it.
For what? For no reason.
Mm-hmm.
For no reason. The only thing you can call it is humility. I'm perfect, but I'm not enough. Why? I don't know. There's no reason. It's just me? Perfect little old me? Not good enough. So he creates us, and now it's good enough? Come on, this is a real mystery. But it's divine. It's beautiful. And because we're created in his image, we have the same instinct. Just me? And the richer I am, the more successful I am, the more powerful I am, the more being just me feels wrong. A very interesting phenomenon. People today who are worth $100 billion. Now, can anyone in their right mind even imagine that the $100 billion is meant for them? Like
No.
They need it, they could use it.
There's no way
There's
that
no
all
way.
your descendants for 1,000 years could spend $100 billion.
So it is so clear that it's my $100 billion, belongs to me legally. If you take a single penny of that money, you're stealing. So it's mine, and it was never meant for me. That's a fantastic insight. Things can be mine, but never meant for me. Like, for example, the love I have was never meant for me. Self-love, it's a disease.
Boy,
Everybody
there's a whole industry of
Yes.
self-esteem, self-love,
And look what it's doing to us.
Yeah.
More. How do you feel now? Well, how does that make you feel? Stop it. You're making me sick.
Mm-hmm.
We have to outgrow this.
This is a very, so all-pervasive, especially in the young people. My daughter will say to me, I can't say no to my friend because she'll feel bad. I can't be responsible for making her feel bad. She'll feel bad. Like this is the whole explanation, that nothing else needs to be said in their world. Should you make someone else feel bad, you must find some other way. And never mind that, our tradition is all about distinctions. There are distinctions that need to be made, lines that we don't cross. And when we don't cross them and when we do make these distinctions, someone will feel bad. And sometimes we feel bad. Okay.
So here's the double standard, the way the Torah sees it. I have to be extremely sensitive about your feelings, your mood, your needs, your sensitivities. I have to be careful not to give you bad news. I have to be careful not to give you insult or put down or make you uncomfortable.
Humiliate me, God forbid.
Right. You're not allowed to take a bite out of an apple when you're sitting with another person because the bitten part of the apple may make him uncomfortable. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Yes. You don't take a bite out of a sandwich because the bite makes some people a little nauseous. You don't drink from another person's glass because then they can't drink from it. So you have to.
Are you saying that if we both have apples, we can't bite our own apples in front of each other?
Right. You have to take a slice and put it in your mouth.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we have to be so sensitive about each other's sensitivities. But by myself, for me, I got to stop being so sensitive. So it's a double standard of sorts. But that's what goodness is all about. Goodness means you don't have so many needs. Stop it. Don't be so particular. Don't be so sensitive. Don't be so absorbed in yourself. But I have to take every sensitivity you have seriously.
Oh, so my daughter's not so wrong.
She's not
She's
wrong.
so worried about making somebody else feel bad.
Now,
Okay.
if we all had that sensitivity, then the people around us would not be so needy.
Right. About ourselves, we can't be so worried about whether we feel bad or not.
It's not healthy.
Right.
It's not healthy. Stop it. Don't paralyze yourself. Don't handicap yourself. Don't do this to yourself. So somebody insulted you. So what? So what? Your feelings are hurt. Well, for a minute, and then you bounce back, and so what? But don't ever do that to somebody else. So there's the double standard that makes civilization what it is. I have to take your foolishness seriously, but you don't do that to yourself.
Okay.
So don't take yourself seriously. Leave that to me.
So if we bring this idea into couplehood, very
Wow.
strong.
Yes.
Right, very strong. I have to not be particular about myself and be very particular about my partner.
Yeah.
And both of us have to feel that way. That's why this idea of meeting halfway never works. Right?
You know, the Rebbe would daven in the afternoon, and he would put his hand on his forehead, you know, like concentration. And he would look down into the siddur and put his hand on his forehead, and that's how. But there's some young guy came from Israel, and his face was severely deformed from some explosion or something, where he was born that way, but it was really bad, hard to look at. Anytime he was anywhere in the synagogue, the Rebbe didn't put his hand on his forehead. Just in case the guy might think that the Rebbe is refusing to look at him.
For that
Avoiding.
reason, okay. Yeah, just look so that you wouldn't think that the Rebbe is looking away.
Right.
Now,
So
you
sensitivity
were-
for others, but not for ourselves. There's no virtue in being sensitive to yourself. Like there's no virtue to loving yourself. If you have love, give it away. It's not for you. So imagine a person who said, but I have to love myself. That's like the guy who has $100 billion saying, it's my money, I'm keeping it. That's foolish. What are you keeping it for? Well, it's mine. Keep it under my mattress.
Now, there's so many things I want to ask you, but what you just said really made me think that there are people who say, I have so much love to give. I want to be married. I love the institution of marriage. I just can't find the person.
Too hung up on things. You're looking for all the things to fall into place before you could think of marriage. Put marriage first. You got to be married. You really do. You have to start a family. You got to make a contribution to society, to history, to civilization. So find somebody.
And it's not just about the family, right? I mean, God forbid a person loses their spouse of many years. They're in another generation, a later time in life. They're 50s, 60s, 70s, even older. They should be married too, right?
Yes.
They're always looking for partners.
Alone is no good.
Alone is
All
no
right.
good.
So what are they looking for? They're looking to be swept off their feet to where, oh, I had no choice but to, I was just so carried away, I didn't even have to make the decision. You can't do that. Make the decision. Make the commitment. Don't be afraid. So they want the decision to happen. You know, like they want to wake up married.
Does this mean you could be married to anyone? I mean, there's got to be some minimums, right?
Yes, yeah. But hypothetically, yes, you could be married to any decent person. Why not? Why not? Any two decent people can make a wonderful marriage. So it's interesting how I've heard it put. If you can't marry anyone, then you can't marry anyone. If you're that particular, and there's only one particular type of person that you could, you're never going to find that.
And when the person changes a little bit, as we all do, then they're no longer your type.
Exactly. Right. Fell out of love. And the first time I did some marriage counseling, this man said to me, "No, I got to get divorced. No, I gotta get at it. I don't need this. And being a yeshiva boy, I said, so divorce this. Why are you divorcing her? You don't need this? Of course, he meant her. So here's the thing. Since the 60s, the average couple, decent, moral, upstanding, idealistic, they're practicing pornography at home.
How can you say that? What are you saying? What do you mean?
For example, people are intimate with the lights on. That's pornography. Because I remember I Love Lucy, those shows, the Honeymooners, all these 50s.
They turn out the light.
You turn out the light and then you're intimate. That was the norm. When did that change?
When society started telling you that if you turn the lights off, it's because you have a bad body image. You're ashamed of yourself. You don't appreciate your partner in all their naturalness.
That came later.
Huh.
Who introduced lights on? Pornography.
Or truly pornography.
Yeah, you
It's
can't.
not a metaphor. This is pornography.
Yeah, you can't take pictures in the dark.
Okay.
So everyone I mentioned this to, from the most liberal to the most religious, never have lights on. You want intimacy? Turn the lights off. And their reaction, all of them, is like, wow, yeah, lights off. Now imagine the room is dark because anything you see is going to distract you from the intimacy because you're seeing a thing. Eyes only see things. Intimacy is a non-thing. So anything you see, even if it's your spouse, you're going to see something about your spouse. You're missing her or him. So in the dark. So you see nothing. There also should be no sounds. Nothing. So you see nothing, you hear nothing. You also should not speak during intimacy. So you see nothing, you hear nothing, you say nothing. Where is your mind going to go?
To your partner.
In a sense, it doesn't go anywhere. It stays right there, which is where you need it. So that's one of the differences between sex and intimacy.
It's funny that you whisper sweet nothings. That's what it's called. But you're whispering something, so it's not a nothing. Where we really want to go is to nothing.
Yeah, what if what you're whispering turns out to be offensive or interesting? That distracts you from what you're doing.
I remember in college somebody showed me the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, many volumes, and the entry for nothing. When page after page after page, nothing is a big concept in philosophy. Very difficult to achieve, many subtle variations and permutations of what it is. But with all these definitions, they're not at it. Nothing is nothing, and it's a very elusive goal. But we can certainly, as you say, we could take away the lights, we can take away even whispering each other's name, none of that. The music, nothing. Obviously, just removing all boundaries between you. And I guess where you're headed is soul to soul, well, soul and body, right? Rider and...
So here's a really dramatic idea, which I think is the future of psychology. All of psychology puts emphasis on your needs, particularly your unexpressed, frustrated needs. That's the cure for everything. You find those needs, satisfy them, and you're healthy. For some reason, it's not working so well. If we're going to be intimate, If we could get past all things, it must be within our nature. There must be some place in me where things don't belong and are not necessary. Nothing. It turns out that if we go deep enough within ourselves, we will go right past all those repressed needs to a place where we have no needs at all. The place of freedom within us, or as some call it, the place of silence. Nothing going on there, it's quiet. That's where prophecy happens. When you can reach that place where you're not making noise, you can hear God speaking. Some guy, it's in the news, some guy in India, I think, is suing his parents for giving birth to him without his consent. Isn't that amazing?
Okay.
He says, it was not my idea. I didn't agree to this. So now you forced me into this world. You're going to have to pay for everything for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's what he wants.
That's what he wants.
He's unwilling to work.
Yeah. He wants to have a good life now that he's here. But anyway, so there is this thing happening, and it's new. Children saying, I didn't ask to be born. And of course, our immediate reaction is, kid's depressed. Put him on something. He's not depressed. If a kid says, I didn't ask to be born, you should say, neither did I. No one asks to be born. And there's some new age philosophy of some. No, we do not ask to be born. In fact, we beg not to be.
No, we had it made in the world of souls.
Why would you want to?
Why would you want to leave that?
So why don't we ask to be born? Because we don't need to. I have no need to be here in the first place. And yet, I take every little need I happen to have so seriously, like, whoa, wait a minute. You don't even need to be here. Lighten up. So I need to eat. I need to sleep. I need love. I need security. No, I don't. I didn't ask for any of that because I don't need any of that. I am saddled with it. Wasn't my idea.
Right.
To have to eat every 3 hours.
Much more important than what you need is the fact that you are needed.
There you go.
That's why you're here.
You don't need to be here at all, and yet you're here. Figure that out. But stop indulging every whim and every feeling and every impulse. It's not about that. Get free. Get past all the needs that were imposed on you against your will, and find the part of you that needs nothing and is therefore completely available to someone else. Now, in a moment of intimacy, that's where you go.
Okay.
But it's only for a moment, and then you're back to your stuff. Right?
No, but it is crucial that we're having this conversation and that the person who's listening to us right now is hearing it. Because if you don't know that place exists, it's harder to find. And you may well go a whole lifetime without
just fixing yourself, feeding yourself,
exactly,
pampering yourself.
Knowing it's there doesn't guarantee you'll get there.
Right.
It'll be fleeting if you do, but at least you know. At least you know that it's possible and that that's where you're headed, and you're so much more likely to work your way over there or to unwork your way over there.
Yeah. And I think that that's where psychology is going to have to go. The next time you go to a therapist, he's going to try to get you to that place where you don't need him. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you weren't born knowing this. At some point, you acquired that knowledge. Do you remember that moment? Was there an aha moment for you?
I don't think it was just one moment. There are components and there are pieces, and one at a time they appeared. Hasidic philosophy is all about getting past yourself, not into yourself. But I never realized how practical. I thought that was very religious, very spiritual. But more and more I discover it's just our truest nature, because nothing else is working. So this is not for Jews only, and it's not for Hasidim only, and it's not for people who want to study Kabbalah.
Yeah, nothing we've said is particularly Jewish or particular to Jews.
That's right.
However, you occupied a very privileged position, I believe, for 10 years. You were simultaneously translating for the Rebbe. So he would speak in Yiddish, and you would translate to English.
On satellite television.
On satellite television. Now, this is an amazing thing, because you must split yourself literally into two minds at once, take in everything that he's saying, transform it into a language that can be understood. You have to be so in his wavelength. I imagine there's no room for you to think about what he's saying. You can only, receive and transmit. I mean, it's a beautiful, you are receiving and giving simultaneously. Is there something that you learned from that experience beyond the content of what he said, something about him? I mean, a kind of connection that you made?
Oh, the first thing I learned was that he has much more energy than I have. Because after the third talk, I was exhausted, and he was just getting started. So his energy built.
What do you mean the third talk? In a row, or you mean like the third week? Or
No. Each Farbrengen was 5 or 6 talks.
Okay.
With a break for singing and...
Oh, that he would do different topics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely different topics. And you had
wow.
to really just switch hats and...
And so can you paint the picture? I mean, for people who are unfamiliar, what is a Farbrengen?
Okay, a Farbrengen, all the Chassidim get together, the Rebbe speaks, explains what's going on in the weekly Parsha, the weekly Torah reading, what's going on in current affairs, something out of the Talmud that needs to be understood or explained, Hasidic discourse that is original, and whatever else the Rebbe wants to talk about.
Okay. He's doing this once a week, right? Once a week?
On Shabbos.
That's when he's doing it after Shabbos ends?
No, during Shabbos, but then it wasn't broadcast.
Okay.
So these were 8 times a year.
Okay.
Where he Farbrengen during the week, and it was in the evening, and it was broadcast.
Okay.
On cable, on satellite. So it was on an average about 4 to 5 hours.
Amazing.
And the talks were on the average about 45 minutes to an hour. So the Rebbe just kept getting stronger and stronger, and I'm like gasping for breath. I guess because I was nervous or whatever. But so one of the things that I had to really quickly adjust to is like we were saying, don't think. Don't stop to think, because you're going to lose it. Mm-hmm. And then you're behind, and then that's it. You've ruined it. So you can't stop to think. You just have to, in and out. You also have to completely eliminate your own personality. So once in a while, when the Rebbe was saying something really intensely, and I found myself raising my voice, no. You don't have feelings. You let the Rebbe come across, the Rebbe's intensity.
Because the viewer is seeing him.
And you're just a voice.
You're just a voice providing the words.
Personality.
Okay.
The Rebbe would say something humorous, and I would say it in a humorous tone of voice. Bad. You don't exist. So that was an interesting phenomenon. The other thing is, the Rebbe would get so passionate about things that don't affect him at all, or you would think would not affect him, like prayer in public school, or a moment of silence at the beginning of the day. The Rebbe's children are not in the schools, in the public schools. The Chassidim don't send their kids to public schools. So if the Rebbe was concerned, I would understand, but passionate? Amazing.
So this is him speaking on behalf of humanity. I mean, this is something that he feels humans need.
And to him it feels like his obligation. It's his job. He has to do it. There's an intensity there, not just a curious comment, which is very, very, I don't know. You don't see it too often. People being passionate about things that don't have any personal bearing. It's just the right thing and passionate about it. Now, some people told me that they were surfing, with their remote control, and just happened to come across the Farbrengen, the Rebbe. Some of them were so curious they just sat there, mesmerized. One guy tells me he just started to cry. I said, "Cry? It was a happy event. It was always upbeat. It was always." He says, "No." He says, "There was this Jew sitting there on television in front of the whole world, and he was so comfortable in his skin. I've never seen that. Made me cry." So I realized that my job in translating was simply to let the Rebbe be himself. That he doesn't have to think. This is television, this is the world listening, this is non-Jews. He can be himself because he can trust me not to say anything stupid. and that was the main part of the whole thing. That the Farbrengen was a Farbrengen, the Rebbe was being a Rebbe, no difference, no change, no adjustments. The real thing.
But in many ways unique in the history of the world. We were speaking before we came into this studio about the alarming rise in anti-Semitism lately. And if you think about the way the Jews have lived in the world in other times and places and now, either it's the mode of, well, I'm a very visible Jew, so I'll just keep to myself. We'll just stay in our neighborhood and we'll do our own thing. Or, well, I want to be out in the world, so I can't look too Jewish, and hence assimilation and the overwhelming waves of assimilation that the Jewish people have suffered. But the Rebbe took a totally different path and created an army of emissaries to go out into the world and be very visibly Jewish and among the people, including being a Rebbe talking to his Hasidim on TV. And it's just unique that you can't point to a movement like that. And it has changed the world. And here you are, you're sharing ideas that are so rooted in Hasidus and in Torah, but that apply to the whole world. And yet much of what you're saying people haven't heard before. And so if you didn't share it, they wouldn't have that benefit of that. That's what we do at Accidental Talmudist. We believe that as a people, we've been nurturing this wisdom for thousands of years, not for the benefit of the Jews, but for the benefit of humanity. So if we are told, be a light unto the nations, okay, well, you can't have a big curtain around the lighthouse, right? You got to let it shine.
Well put.
Well, we've been speaking for a while. So let me just ask you, is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't touched on?
Spoiling children. It's really connected to what we're talking about. Overindulging, catering to children, giving them the message that they are entitled. Why are we doing this? Just take a quick look. You don't have to be a genius. Look at what's happening to our children.
So please give an example of how it's being done now and how it was done when, in your eyes, it was done correctly. What is the difference?
A huge, huge difference. It used to be parents had a life. Whatever that life was, good, bad, indifferent, but they had a life. Children ran to keep up. Today, if you're a good parent, your whole life centers around the child. The child has a life, and you're running to keep up.
Mm.
This is no good for anybody. The entitlement is horrendous. It's not wrong. It's worse than wrong. It's deadly.
It's creating a horrific expectation on the child, who then will leave the nest, as it were, with the feeling of entitlement that should continue, right?
And of course, he won't get everything he thinks he's entitled to, so he will come to the obvious conclusion that life stinks, and he'll become
that he's being ripped off,
self-destructive,
right?
Or worse.
Or worse.
Yeah. Listen to the commercials. Why should you buy this product? Because you deserve every product. It used to be buy this product because it's the best. Doesn't matter if it's the best anymore. You deserve. So buy this hair product because you deserve beautiful hair. What does one do to deserve hair? I don't know.
I mean, it's so interesting because you look at the drug crisis. All different kinds of drugs are being abused. I mean, these days we talk about the opioid crisis, but a lot of different drugs are being abused in different ways. These drugs are not new. They've been around for a very long time. And while there was always people who suffered from addiction, it seems like the numbers, it's a plague now of people suffering drug addiction, and it must be because they're medicating for against this ripoff that they're not getting what they deserve, and no one's rising up to give it to them. A lot of promises are being made by politicians that cannot be kept, and so over and over again, they feel, well, I'm not getting what I deserve. What am I going to do? Forget the pain, not change the expectation.
It's not a secret. To this day, the most memorable and the most popular inauguration speech segment.
You're going to say Kennedy.
Yes.
Ask not.
Why does everybody love that?
Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Because that appeals to the healthiest part in us.
Mm-hmm.
Promising me that you'll take care of me and you'll fix everything and you'll make me happy, and that appeals to the most unhealthy part in me, the needy part.
Right.
So here's the sum of our conversation. Don't make your children needy. Convince them that they are needed.
Yeah.
Because that's really what a human being is about. To be needed, not to be needy.
Rabbi Friedman, I want to thank you so much. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
I know that people who are listening to this are going to take a moment right now as we finish, as we sign off, and just let it sink in a silent way, not to process it, just to approach nothingness a little bit. Approach nothing. And feel that space where you really are, where God willing your partner is or will be soon, and with God's help, that all of us can reach for and touch nothing, nothing, where there's only us, and our partner, and the soul that comes straight from God, that was needed in this world, and that's why we're here. And if we're only satisfying the craving of the body, the soul can't outshout that. It can only be heard in the quiet.
So we can't say to God, like, I want to marry you for your money. We can't say to God, I want to get to heaven. Can you help me? Because then we're saying, look, can I just get to heaven without all your conditions?
This whole life thing.
Yeah. So if I could just get to heaven without you, I'd be very happy. But yeah, you got the keys, so I'm going to put up with you? That is so insulting. When we do a mitzvah, there is no thing that we're trying to achieve. There's no thing. When God asks us to do a mitzvah, he's just asking us to be his, not something. So don't become a saint, and don't become a tzaddik, and don't become religious, and don't become anything. Just be mine. That's a good message for the world.
That's a good message. Thank you.